The boy's hand was a blur of raw, bleeding meat, yet he didn't slow down. He struck the training drone with a precision that defied the crushing weight of the room's gravity. Above him, the carrier's structural ribs groaned under the artificial 2.4 G load, a sound like a giant grinding its teeth. Kalen didn't hear it. He only heard the wet thud of his own knuckles and the frantic, shallow whistle of his own lungs. Beneath the observation deck, something shifted. The drone lunged, its metallic arm whistling toward Kalen's temple. He dipped, the air from the near miss cooling the sweat on his neck, and countered with a strike that sent a spray of hydraulic fluid across the deck. He was a trainee, a non-essential, a Tier 0 ghost in a ship full of ancient, glowing gods. But in the dark of the cargo hold, the labels didn't weigh nearly as much as the gravity. I wonder if the suit's internal cooling. A sound like a world breaking in half silenced his internal monologue. It wasn't a noise heard with the ears, but a psionic scream that vibrated through his very marrow. The cargo hold lights flickered once, twice, then died, leaving only the amber emergency strobes to paint the room in pulses of warning. Kalen stopped. He wiped a smear of blood onto his gray fatigues and looked toward the viewport. He was terrified. That was the truth of it. His heart was a trapped bird hammering against his ribs, and his skin felt tight, as if he were being watched by something that hadn't even been born yet. 6 days ago, the hardest decision he'd faced was whether to skip the morning ration. It felt like a lifetime since the briefing. He could still smell the stale, burnt scent of the synthetic coffee he'd been nursing when Princess Valethri mapped the Ashen Maw. The high-ranking officers had looked through him as if he were made of glass. They spoke of the Vokai, the mountain-sized predators of the void, with a reverence that bordered on religious. To the sovereignty, these creatures were hurricanes with heartbeats. But Kalen had seen the data. He'd seen the way the Vokai were drifting, their massive forms tilting in a unified direction. It reminded him of the wolves back on the Siberian reserves, the way they'd huddle at the edge of a clearing when a grizzly claimed the kill. If the apex predators are kneeling, Kalen had thought, then whatever they're kneeling to isn't a predator. It's the end of the chain. The ship lurched, a violent shudder that threw him against a storage crate. The rhythmic clicking of a broken latch on the crate became the only steady thing in the world as the alarms intensified. Outside, in the cold dark of the expanse, 17 Vokai were trembling. Kalen climbed to his feet, his jaw tight. He wasn't on the ground team. He was supposed to be sorting rations in Supply Bay 4, which meant the readings were wrong. He didn't go to the Supply Bay. He moved toward the biosign monitors, watching as 12 green lights, the finest soldiers the galaxy had to offer, flickered in the silence of the dead planet below. 1 second they were heartbeats. The next, they were nothing. Kalen didn't wait for the second team to fall. He was already moving through the maintenance shafts, his boots ringing against the cold alloy as he bypassed the primary elevators. Every alien he passed was a tableau of collapse. Kalen's were curled into fetal positions, their silver-blue skin mottled with stress fractures, while Dryans clawed at the bulkheads in a desperate, blind attempt to find a corner deep enough to hide their massive frames. Princess Valethri looks like. He saw her through the bridge doors. She was a frozen sculpture of regal agony, her amethyst eyes blown wide and leaking red as she poured every drop of her psionic legacy into a shield that was currently being shredded by the mere existence of the thing outside. "Commander," Kalen said. His voice was a sandpaper rasp in the high-frequency hum of the bridge. Valethri didn't look at him. She couldn't. The pale sovereign had turned its 6 burning eyes toward the carrier, and the pressure was no longer a wave. It was an ocean. "I am going out," he stated, his hands steady as he sealed his helmet. "Suicide." Rockin managed to grunt from the floor, his jaw leaking gray blood from a cracked molar. Kalen didn't argue. He stepped into the airlock, the outer doors cycling with a hiss that sounded like the last breath of a dying world. Then there was only the void. He floated, a single, unaugmented speck of carbon and water drifting toward 2 kilometers of crystalline bone and cold fire that had hunted the galaxy before his ancestors had even discovered the concept of a wheel. The Sovereign's mind hit him. It went looking for the fear it had used to stop the hearts of the elite ground team, and it found it instantly. It found the boy in the green water, the man dying alone in the dark, and the crushing weight of being a teardrop and nothing in a universe of giants. It pressed, but deep within Kalen's neurological architecture, a switch flipped. It was a legacy of persistence hunting, of chasing prey across sun-scorched plains until the animal's heart gave out simply because the human behind it refused to stop walking. He didn't break. The sovereign recoiled. It wasn't pain, but a tectonic shift in recognition as it realized it wasn't looking at prey, but at an apex survivor that carried fear like a weapon. The psionic broadcast modulated, shifting from a predatory scream into a frequency of absolute, bone-deep respect. He stayed there for 47 minutes. 11 months later, the supply bay smelled different. The stale, burnt scent of the old recycler was gone, replaced by the crisp, ozonic tang of high-end atmospheric processors. Kalen sat at the tactical table now, his fingers tracing the edge of a new badge that sat heavy on his chest. It didn't say trainee. It didn't say non-essential. It was the symbol of the vanguard, a rank forged in the moment a god decided a human was worth acknowledging. Rockin sat across from him, the massive Dryan nodding in a slow, rhythmic gesture that mirrored the clicking of the old crate latches from the maw. The ship hummed with a new kind of energy. The galaxy was vast and terrifying and full of things that could end a world with a thought, but as the carrier pivoted toward the next dark horizon, Kalen simply watched the stars. He felt the familiar, cold prickle of fear at the edge of his spine and welcomed it. The darkness didn't own the night anymore.